spoke, Lance, that your imagination is going to be your most important tool in this process. How far do you want to take this in your imagination?
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I like that. And I find that the creative imagination is an extremely important tool in the creation process.
Well, it's a key of alchemy. There's a great expression in Latin which goes, imaginatio fortis generat causum. And it means a strong imagination creates the event. Now, this is a little bit different from the law of attraction I'm talking here. Mm-hmm. What I mean is that when the human imagination can get attuned to the larger imaginative dream of the universe itself, because it definitely seems to have a plan to me. It seems to be a sentient and aware system. If it's fractal, and it is, I believe it is fractal, and that consciousness is not just shared by us in our human shells. It is actually sentient, intelligent life is what created the universe, and not the other way around. So if that is the case, the universe is interested in one thing and one thing only, and that is life and life and life, and the ongoing evolution of life and intelligence and creativity and joy and beauty and all of these wonderful things. But if we use our imagination to go up side streets here, especially side streets full of fear and despair and darkness, then that's where we will tend to remain. And I suppose, Lance, the simplest metaphor I use, especially in Japan, is the metamorphosis of the cocoon into a butterfly. And I believe that we're still inside the cocoon. The earth is also like a cocoon. The earth is cracking open. There's a metaphor for you right there. The earth is cracking open, and you could even use the shell of an egg inside which you have the baby bird, which is cozy and warm in its little environment. But I'll ask you a question, Lance. Do you know why the timing, do you know how the timing of a bird breaking out of a shell works?
No, I don't.
What would you imagine?
Well, it seems like it would reach a certain point where it would want to, be in the light and the air and breathe. It would feel too confined.
Okay. I think most listeners would also probably feel, Lance, that the body has reached its maximum size, and it cannot get any bigger inside the shell. And it's time, it's reached its full term, so it's got to break out of the shell. It's kind of it's a natural, the body is just too big for the container anymore, right?
Right.
Well, this is actually completely wrong. Inside the shell, there is a membrane. And inside that membrane, there's a deadly, toxic chemical composition that is exquisitely timed to be released just at the point when that embryo is big enough to get out of there, and it's released inside and toxifies the entire inner environment of the shell. So literally, the being inside has got about 10 seconds in utter chaos and asphyxiative dilemma, and it's like, I got to get out of here now, or I'm going to be a dead bird.
Wow.
Now look at that to what's happening now. We've got toxic radiation in Japan. We've got shell cracking all around, this massive pollution. And if this isn't a metaphor for it's time to break out of the shell or the cocoon for metamorphosis, well, I don't know what is.
Well, and then you've got everything else that's going on, the poisoning of the water and the food and the air with chemtrails globally.
The oil spill, the sea.
There you go. There you have it. So, yeah.
I mean, we've got to start looking at things with a metaphorical imagination and see where and when we are, and stop locking into this denial that we can carry on shopping till we're blue in the face. It's finished, baby. It's over. We got to go somewhere else now. We are transmigratory souls on a huge galactic journey here, and we're in this, little 5'8", bioplasmic thingy here, which is like a suit. It's just like a spacesuit. But we got to get ready to take the helmets off and get out of the suit and move in a different environment. And the sun is going to be what triggers all of this as far as I can see.
Wow. Well, I love what you're saying, and I agree with it totally. And the Matrix seems to continually project the illusion that everything is as it has always been. And I was born in the 50s with television and commercials, so they're still blaring away, and it's as if nothing is different. But as you said, it's going to sneak up on people unawares if they're not turning off their televisions and looking around and seeing what's real in the real age.
Well, to get back just for a second to conspiracy theory, in 2003, I wrote a book called The Myth of the Photon Belt. I wanted to de-new age this idea and put it in perspective. And the perspective I put it in was, of course, the photon belt is simply a metaphor for solar activity because photons come from the sun. And in that book, in 2003, I was talking about the fact that Denver Airport probably sits on a massive underground base which has been specifically created to protect people in the know against an event happening in the very near future. And lo and behold, Jesse Ventura on the TV last night here in Canada with his conspiracy theory was right in there at Denver Airport and digging up all of the information which I had discovered, in 2003 and many other people were aware of. But it was interesting because he was standing there with another researcher, and there's these horrendous murals of apocalyptic disaster, fire and damnation, and Nazis' swords. Anybody can go on the net and look at the murals in Denver. I mean, there are gargoyles, there are Masonic symbols up the yin-yang, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and yet 98% of the people, I guess, walk through Denver Airport, don't even give it a second glance. And one guy who was interviewed said something very interesting. He said, we're interested in saving people who have the perceptive ability to know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, we, the ones who have built this huge underground shelter beneath Denver Airport, and I have no doubt in my mind that it is there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Jesse Ventura, bless his soul, he did a great job of making that available to a lot more people's awareness. But that was the key phrase. Those people who can wake up and smell the roses are the ones who deserve to survive. Yeah. All of the poor schmucks who walk through here and go, interesting painting, nothing to do with me. Interesting solar activity, nothing to do with me. The World Trade Center just evaporated into a cloud of smoke. Nothing to do with me, right?
Yeah, right.
Those people, according to the powers to be, do not have the right to continue on as a species because they're so sick. Now, I'm not saying that. That is the mentality of people who believe that they are an elite group who deserve to stay around. Now, that is not a conspiracy theory. That is a fact of life, and it always has been. If you don't wake up, nobody's going to pay attention to you, first of all, and you're not going to pay attention to yourself. So it's time to pay attention to what's going on. Really pay attention, which is why we call it the real age, and get serious about quickly evolving your consciousness to the state where you can be of assistance to other people. Because if you're a panicked mess, and, I've been seeing many videos of the tsunami hitting that are now coming out of Japan taken by private people. And the one I saw today, guy's in a taxi, he's a reporter for Sendai News, and he's in his taxi, and he hears the loudspeakers going, tsunami coming, and he quietly says, looks like a tsunami is coming. Driver, would you head away from the sea? So they head away from the sea. The water trucks start moving up the street towards him in his taxi, and he's filming it. And he said, if I hadn't had the window down, I would not have heard the second warning, which said, tsunami coming now, get out your cars.
Wow.
He kept his camera rolling, and you could see the water was approaching him, and it's so weird the way the tsunami hits. Many people think it's like this massive thunderous wave comes at you from the sky. It seems like a trickle at first, and people will go, there's nothing much going on here. But very quickly, that trickle, like a flash flood, grows in volume and speed. And he had just enough time to get out of that taxi and run to a building, and there are people up on the veranda above him in the balcony looking at it coming, and he politely said in Japanese, "Would you mind telling me how to get into the building, please?" Here's a guy with a tsunami up his butt coming at 800 kilometers an hour.
Oh, my God.
And he said, "Please tell us where the entrance is." And they said, "Down there, come up the stairs." And as he's coming up the stairs, they start flooding.
Wow.
And within 20 seconds, they're standing on the balcony looking at a woman up a tree, a guy with his child up another tree, and cars and boats and offices and houses going past them about 25 miles an hour. And they're calmly and collectively thinking, we got to rescue that woman, we got to do this, we got to do that. They're not freaking out.
Well, you want to hear
how come they can do that?
You want to hear something really weird, how art imitates life? I just watched a movie that was produced by Spielberg and directed by Clint Eastwood last night.
I saw it last night!
Did you? Yeah.
It was amazing. The tsunami scene was unbelievable.
Yeah, and that was just what you're describing, and they made that movie before the real tsunami.
That's right, and that movie has been banned in Japanland.
It has.
Yeah, they won't release it. They say it's too psychologically. I mean, the scenes, for those who haven't seen, amazing new creation by the inestimable Eastwood, at that age, making a movie like that, you know.
Incredible.
There's a scene where the woman is underwater, going through twisted girders and cars, being swept forward, banging her head. She gets concussed. She loses it. She dies, and she goes to the other side for a while. That's the name Hereafter. But it is so viscerally, powerfully shown how people will stand and they'll just gawk for a while. That doesn't look that bad.
Yeah.
But a tsunami goes at about 500 miles an hour.
Wow.
You know, it has to bust through a lot of stuff to get to you. So it's not going at that speed when it's coming through a town because it's slowed down a bit. But it's got 800 kilometers worth of kinetic energy behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have time to stand there gawking. I saw another one where there were 2 or 3 people standing gawking at it, and they almost got done. Again, taken from a private veranda on an iPhone. You know, we can all feel that we're protected and we've got it together and we've got our money in the bank account and everything's going to be ducky. But when this comes, you're going to have like 3 or 4 seconds to gather your thoughts.
That's right.
And you're going to have to be very focused in this moment. And you're going to have the agility and the intelligence and the courage to deal with it. Absolutely. And that courage is within all of us, but the Japanese have shown not only courage, they've shown how they can keep cool. Mm-hmm. And in that sense, they have delivered us a very, very powerful and beautiful message before we have to deal with it. And the next one it comes, people will be thinking, oh, I remember what those Japanese people did after the inside of the banquet hall collapsed, and there was panic for about 2 seconds. And then they all got together and lifted the table off the guy. Even the place is shaking, right? Yeah. And people think, oh, I could do that. Yeah, right. Well, I've been in earthquakes in Japan. And I've been on top of buildings in a 7.4 in Tokyo. Oh. You know, I've been on the 30th floor teaching remote viewing, and I'm telling you, this thing was swaying back and forth several feet.
Oh, wow.
And not one person in the class freaked out. I continued teaching because I'm used to them. And if they don't last more than 20 seconds, you start breathing again.
Right, right.
But you know, nobody in that class started any kind of facial maneuvers like I'm about to freak out. Of course, inside the tents, we're all tense. But, I mean, the best place in the world to be in an earthquake is Japan.
Well, of course, you know, they could go off all over the world, especially since the poles are meandering, and many indigenous tribes, as you know, you've been with many of the indigenous tribes in various countries, are speaking about the potential for a pole shift and the possibility of a crustal shift as well. Indeed. And at the beginning of the book, Gamma Dawn, I use the progress of the book a bit like a Sherlock Holmes case, where he has to solve all of these strange factors coming up in his case, one of which being, of course, the massive amount of animal and bird and fish deaths that we've seen around Yeah.
Of course, the drifting